Hello, in this video, I'm going to talk about nephrons. So, nephrons are the functional units of the kidneys. What we mean by that is that a nephron is what is doing the actual filtering of the blood and formation of urine. So, they're doing the functional work of the kidneys. So, a nephron is made up of the renal corpuscle and the renal tubule. So, that's what we're going to talk about here. So, the renal corpuscle is where blood plasma is actually filtered. And I'll talk about glomerular filtration in a separate video following this one. So the actual filtration of the blood is happening in the renal corpuscle. So in our picture here, that is what is happening right here. So we have blood vessels entering in, and then there's a tangled capillary network there called the glomerulus, and then they leave again. Or sorry, it's the other way around. Here it's entering in, tangled capillary network, and then exiting. So this whole thing here is the renal corpuscle. It's in the renal cortex, so it's in the superficial portion of the kidneys, and it's made up of the glomerulus, that's the tangled capillary network that's inside there, and it's inside the glomerular capsule. That's the part that's surrounding the glomerulus. So it's made up of epithelial cells that form sort of a cup to surround the glomerulus. So that's where the blood is going in through those blood vessels. And some of the fluid from the blood is leaving those blood vessels and being collected in that glomerular capsule. Then there's the renal tubule. So it's a whole system of tubes that is attached to the glomerular capsule there. So we can see the renal corpuscle, the glomerulus, and then branching off of that is where the renal tubule starts. So the glomerular filtrate, that's what we call the fluid that is collected by the glomerular capsule from the fluid in the blood vessel. So that's the glomerular filtrate is that fluid, and that fluid is going now into the renal tubules. So the renal tubule is made up of the proximal convoluted tubule, the nephron loop, and then the distal convoluted tubule. So the proximal, in this case, proximal and distal is referring to how close it is to the renal corpuscle. Okay, so proximal meaning closest to it. So leaving right from there, going straight into the proximal convoluted tubule, the closest section, and convoluted meaning tightly coiled. So it's like a curly straw, sort of, up at the proximal portion there. So it's a curly straw, basically, and then it dips down into the nephron loop, also referred to as the loop of Henle for the person who originally discovered it. So it dips down into the nephron loop, which dips down into the renal medulla. So it goes deeper into the kidney, comes back up. And then on the distal end, we have the distal convoluted tubule. So then the distal convoluted tubules lead into the common collecting ducts. So those common collecting ducts are collecting the urine that is formed by many different nephrons. There are a million nephrons. They're teeny tiny and packed full in both kidneys. And so there'll be common collecting ducts every so often collecting the urine that's formed by multiple nephrons in an area. So, functions of the nephron. Overall, the function is to filter the blood and produce urine. But to do that, there are a few very specific functions that it needs to accomplish to be able to do that. So, first, glomerular filtration. So, that's when fluid moves from the blood into the renal corpuscle to become glomerular filtrate. And I'm going to do a whole separate video just discussing how that happens. Okay, so that's step one, is removing fluid from the blood to be filtered. Step two is tubular reabsorption. So as the fluid, that the glomerular filtrate that was removed from the blood, as that fluid is moving through the whole renal tubule, most of what is in that fluid is being reabsorbed throughout the whole tubule. Okay, so most 99% is being reabsorbed. So that's water and all sorts of different solutes, nutrients, things. Most of that is being reabsorbed. If it isn't being reabsorbed, then we would have large quantities of dilute urine, like in the case of if antidiuretic hormone is inhibited, like during alcohol consumption, for example, or in diabetes insipidus, that's an endocrine condition where you're either not producing enough antidiuretic hormone or the kidneys aren't sensitive to it. But in either case, if you're not reabsorbing all that fluid that's being removed from the blood, that means you're producing tons of urine. That's all being urinated, it's all being excreted instead of reabsorbed and returned back into the bloodstream. So tubular reabsorption is very important. Now, at the same time, while that fluid is moving through the whole tubule, so most of the fluid and ions and all sorts of things are being reabsorbed. And at the same time, tubular secretion is happening where the surrounding cells are also secreting substances back into the filtrate so that it can be removed from the body as urine. So fluid flows through the renal tubule and substances are secreted into the fluid from the blood and the surrounding cells. So when there are waste products in the blood and surrounding cells that need to be excreted but weren't removed from the blood when the glomerular filtrate was made, then this is a second opportunity for those waste products and things that we want to get rid of to be removed from the blood and put into what will be the urine for excretion. So tubular secretion is when we're secreting waste products into the fluid that will become urine. So both are really happening at the same time, and different regions of the renal tubule, different regions are more sensitive to different substances. So in certain regions of the tubule, you might be more likely to reabsorb sodium or to reabsorb water or to reabsorb all sorts of different things or to secrete all sorts of different things. Um, but both are sort of happening at the same time. It's like as the fluid is moving through the tubule, there's sort of an exchange of things happening. We're reabsorbing stuff we want to keep and secreting stuff that we want to get rid of. So some of the things that get secreted into the glomerular filtrate would be all sorts of waste products, different types of drugs, ammonia. Ammonia is a waste product of protein metabolism. So when we break down protein in the liver, it produces ammonia. And ammonia is very toxic to the body. So the liver converts most ammonia into urea, which is also a waste product, but it's less toxic, it's less harmful. And so usually that urea goes back into circulation and then is excreted in the urine once it gets filtered by the kidneys. But not all of it is converted into urea. So there is still some ammonia and it's very toxic. So we got to get rid of it as fast as possible. So through tubular secretion, we get rid of waste, drugs, ammonia. It's also a way that we can get rid of a lot of hydrogen ions. So the higher concentration of hydrogen ions in the blood means more acidic blood. So that's a way for us to help regulate our blood pH, is that the kidneys can reabsorb more hydrogen ions if we need to make the blood more acidic, like for on the alkaline side. And if we're becoming too acidic, we can secrete more hydrogen ions to remove them from the blood and reduce the acidity, become more alkaline. And so only 1% of glomerular filtrate eventually becomes urine. Um, well, in a healthy, normal functioning person, about 1% of the fluid that is removed from the blood becomes urine. Again, if there's a problem with ADH, then we might be excreting a lot more than that. Um, okay, well, that is all I have for you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you for the next video.